You've been doing it your entire life, every single morning, without thinking. You stumble into the bathroom, grab a plastic stick covered in synthetic bristles, squeeze a minty paste onto it, and scrub your teeth for 2 minutes. It's so automatic that you don't even fully wake up while you're doing it. But stop for a second. Really stop. Someone had to invent this. Someone had to be the first person to look at their teeth and think, these need cleaning. And when you start pulling on that thread, you end up somewhere genuinely surprising. Because before the toothbrush, before toothpaste, before dental floss, before any of it, ancient humans had surprisingly good teeth. Not perfect, not dentist approved, but far, far better than you'd expect from people who had never heard of fluoride. And understanding why that's true tells you something uncomfortable about the world you live in right now. Let's go back, way back, when archaeologists study skulls of pre-agricultural humans, people who lived anywhere from 300,000 to 10,000 years ago. One of the things they notice first is the teeth. And what they notice is that those teeth are in remarkably good condition. There's plenty of wear. Chewing raw meat, cracking open bones for marrow, grinding coarse plant fibers. All of that leaves marks. But cavities? Rare. Abscesses? Uncommon. The kind of systematic, widespread dental decay that defines modern populations? Almost completely absent. A 2014 study published in Nature Genetics analyzed the oral bacteria preserved inside ancient dental calculus, the hardened plaque buildup on fossilized teeth. What they found was that the microbial communities inside hunter-gatherer mouths looked fundamentally different from yours and mine. Less diverse in the harmful direction, more stable overall. The bacteria primarily responsible for cavities, particularly a species called Streptococcus mutans, were present, but not dominant. They didn't have the environment they needed to thrive. 2 reasons explain this: diet and saliva. Hunter-gatherers weren't eating refined sugar. They weren't eating processed grain flour. Their diet was meat, fish, tubers, wild leafy plants, nuts, berries, and whatever fruit happened to be in season. Natural sugars exist in all of those things, but they're locked inside fiber. Your saliva has to work hard to break them down, and by the time it does, the sugars are distributed slowly and diluted across the entire mouth. The bacteria in your mouth never get the concentrated sugar hit they need to multiply rapidly and produce the acid that eats through enamel. And about saliva, this one surprises people. Modern humans are chronically undersalivating. We eat soft, processed food that requires minimal chewing. Ancient humans chewed hard, tough, fibrous food constantly, for hours a day. That constant mechanical stimulation produces constant saliva flow. Saliva isn't just liquid in your mouth. It contains proteins that actively fight pathogens. It's nature's antibacterial rinse, and it works best when you produce a lot of it. Ancient humans, without knowing any of the biology, were producing more of it than we do just by eating the food that was available. The mouth was in equilibrium, not spotlessly clean, but self-regulating. And this is the part that almost always gets skipped. That doesn't mean ancient humans weren't doing anything about their teeth, because they were, just not with anything you'd recognize. VHE, OL Dest, dental tool, and human history. Before we get to toothbrushes, we need to talk about toothpicks. Because the toothpick is almost certainly the oldest dental tool in the entire archaeological record. And the evidence for it goes back much further than you probably think. In 2017, researchers examined fossilized teeth from a Neanderthal individual recovered from the Cova Ferrata site in Spain. This individual lived approximately 150,000 years ago, and on the surfaces between several of the molars, they found grooves. Not random wear from chewing. Deliberate, repeated, directional grooves that could only have been made by something thin and hard being pushed repeatedly into the same narrow gap. A toothpick. Almost certainly a sharpened sliver of wood or bone. This wasn't a single unusual specimen. In multiple Neanderthal sites across Europe, from Spain to Croatia to Iraq, similar interproximal grooves appear on fossilized teeth. Whoever these individuals were, they had a routine. Something was bothering them in the gaps between their teeth, and they did something about it. consistently enough that it left permanent marks in the bone. And it goes back further than Neanderthals. Homo heidelbergensis specimens from sites in Europe show the same markings. Some researchers have identified possible toothpick-related wear on teeth attributed to even earlier members of the genus Homo, potentially pushing the practice back over 1 million years. The specific interpretations are debated, but the pattern across multiple species and multiple continents is hard to dismiss. Think about what that means. The instinct to remove something stuck between your teeth is not a modern quirk. It may be older than our species. Somewhere in the evolutionary history of the human lineage, a being felt discomfort in their teeth, found a thin object, applied it to the problem, and felt relief, and then did it again the next time, and the time after that, until it was habit. Joven cleaning became deliberate. The leap from removing stuck food particles to actively cleaning the surfaces of teeth is subtle, but it matters. And when you look for evidence of deliberate, proactive oral hygiene, not just reactive toothpicking, you find it appearing at sites across multiple continents in the archaeological record of modern Homo sapiens. In Kafsa Cave in Israel, at sites occupied roughly 100,000 years ago, teeth show specific wear patterns that researchers interpret as consistent with something being rubbed repeatedly along the surfaces of the enamel. Not food processing wear, but tool-assisted cleaning wear. Similar patterns appear at Atapuerca in Spain, at sites across North Africa. The organic materials those ancient people used, likely small twigs or wrapped plant fibers, decomposed thousands of years ago and left nothing behind. But the traces on the enamel remained. The first explicitly intentional tooth cleaning tool we can trace with real historical confidence is what we now call a chewing stick. The Arabic words miswak and siwak refer specifically to sticks from the Salvadora persica tree, but the concept of the chewing stick spans dozens of cultures, multiple continents, and dozens of different plant species. The mechanics are simple. You take a small twig, roughly the diameter of a pencil, from a specific plant. You chew one end until it frays into a loose cluster of fibers that functions like a natural brush head. Then you use those fibers to scrub your teeth and massage your gums. That's it. You've just made a toothbrush from a branch. And the tree does part of the work biochemically. Salvadora persica, the most extensively studied chewing stick species, contains natural fluoride, antibacterial compounds, silica, which acts as a gentle abrasive, and a chemical called salvadorine, which has demonstrated ability to inhibit bacterial growth. It's not just wood. It's a piece of wood that actively fights the organisms causing tooth decay while you're using it. The oldest written reference to chewing sticks appears in Babylonian cuneiform texts dating to around 3,500 BCE. But written language is a very recent invention in human history, and the practice predates writing by an unknown but probably significant margin. Today, over 600 million people across Africa, the Middle East, South Asia, and Southeast Asia still use chewing sticks as their primary dental tool. That's not a minor historical curiosity. That's a continuous tradition durable enough to outlast every empire, every plague, every war, and every technological revolution that happened while it was quietly continuing. Ancient EGYPT. The first dental profession. If you want the first culture that treated dental care as a formal, organized discipline, you go to ancient Egypt. And what you find there is much more sophisticated than most people expect. Egyptians had dentists, actual, trained, titled dental specialists. The oldest named dental practitioner in all of recorded history is a man called Hesi-Ra, who lived around 2600 BCE. His tomb at Saqqara contains inscriptions that have been translated as identifying him as the greatest of those who deal with teeth, a phrase that researchers interpret as a formal professional title. He had a job description. He had a rank. Dentistry was already a recognized specialty 4,600 years ago, in the same civilization that was simultaneously building the pyramids. But Egyptians went further than practitioners. They developed what is almost certainly the first written toothpaste recipe in recorded history. A papyrus now housed in Vienna, dated to the 4th century CE but believed to draw on sources centuries older, describes a tooth powder made from rock salt, dried iris flowers, pepper, and mint leaves. You mix these dry ingredients together, dampen the mixture, and used it to clean your teeth. In 2003, A team of Austrian researchers recreated this formula exactly as written and tested it against commercial products. Their findings were striking. The Egyptian formulation was effective at removing plaque. It left the mouth feeling clean. The mint provided a genuinely pleasant sensation that made people want to keep using it. One member of the research team, a dentist named Heinz Neumann, reportedly said he found it more effective and more pleasant than most commercial toothpastes he had used professionally. He started using it himself. Egyptians also had procedures for treating abscessed teeth, remedies for gum inflammation, and documented approaches to toothache management. None of those procedures involved anything resembling anesthetic, which means ancient dental treatment was probably among the most painful medical experiences a person could endure and survive. And yet people still sought it out, repeatedly, because the desire to keep functional teeth was stronger than the fear of what the treatment involved. India. Sheer oral hygiene became philosophy. While Egypt was developing formal dental practice along the Nile, something parallel and in some ways more systematic was developing on the Indian subcontinent. In India, oral hygiene wasn't just medical protocol. It was embedded in a broader philosophy about the relationship between bodily care and spiritual discipline. The Karaka Samhita, one of the foundational texts of Ayurvedic medicine, was compiled in its present form approximately in the 1st century CE, but contains material that scholars trace to oral traditions at least 1,000 years older. The text dedicates substantial space to dental care, and what it prescribes is remarkably specific. Teeth should be cleaned every morning without exception, using a fresh stick from specific recommended plants. Neem. Azadirachta indica appears most prominently. Modern analysis has found that neem contains over 40 biologically active compounds, including substances with demonstrated antimicrobial, anti-inflammatory, and antiseptic properties. The ancient Indian recommendation to use neem sticks was not ritual superstition. It was functional pharmacology that arrived at the right answer roughly 2,000 years before anyone understood the germ theory of disease. The Karaka Samhita also specifies technique. The stick should approach the teeth at a particular angle. The tongue should be scraped. Copper tongue scrapers appear throughout the material record of ancient India, manufactured from copper for common use and from gold or silver for the wealthy. The gums should be massaged with specific plant preparations. This is not a quick morning rinse. This is a structured, multi-step oral hygiene protocol with individual components and documented reasoning behind each of them. When your dentist walks you through the correct order of brushing, flossing, and tongue scraping, they are describing essentially the same sequence that Ayurvedic practitioners were teaching in India 2,000 years ago. The tools changed, the logic didn't. And this raises a question worth pausing on. Why did Egypt, Babylon, India, and other cultures we haven't reached yet arrive at similar practices independently without knowing what the others were doing? The answer is probably simpler than it seems. Tooth pain is universal. The mouth is something every human inhabits. Decay, swelling, the sensation of something wedged between teeth. None of these require civilization to notice. The problem was always there. The solutions emerged independently wherever people had enough stability to think about long-term bodily maintenance rather than immediate survival. By the end of the 1st millennium BCE, dental care traditions existed across most of the known world. Some were crude, some were surprisingly sophisticated, but the idea that teeth required deliberate, routine maintenance, that you could do something about the state of your mouth, was already very old. Humans have been cleaning their teeth longer than our species has existed. Neanderthals used toothpicks. Ancient civilizations used chewing sticks packed with natural antibacterial compounds. Egyptians had professional dentists by 2600 BCE and made toothpaste that a modern dentist tested and actually preferred. The recognizable toothbrush, stiff bristles anchored into a drilled handle, was invented in China in 1498 using Siberian boar hair. It spread through trade routes into Europe by the 17th century. The problem: organic bristles absorb moisture and breed bacteria, essentially reintroducing what you just removed. Nobody understood this until germ theory arrived in the late 1800s. Medieval European dental health was genuinely terrible. Wealthy people ate sugar and rotted their teeth. Poor people, ironically, had better teeth. Extractions were performed by barber surgeons with no anesthesia. People died from infected toothaches. Queen Elizabeth, I refused extraction despite serious pain. Compared to ancient Egypt, this was regression. The scientific breakthrough came in stages. In 1683, Dutch merchant Antony van Leeuwenhoek scraped plaque from his own teeth, looked through his microscope, and discovered living organisms, the first recorded observation of oral bacteria. In 1890, dentist Willoughby Miller published The Bacterial Mechanism of Tooth Decay, transforming dentistry from repair into prevention. The biggest behavioral shift came from the military. Before World War II, fewer than a quarter of Americans brushed daily. The U.S. Army made it mandatory in 1942. Millions of soldiers brushed every day for years, not by choice, but by order. When the war ended, they came home and kept the habit, passing it to their children as something normal people simply do. The technology caught up at exactly the right moment. In 1938, DuPont introduced nylon bristles, the first material that didn't absorb moisture or harbor bacteria. Cleaner, more consistent, and cheaper than anything before it. Then, in 1955, Crest launched the first successful fluoride toothpaste. The ADA endorsed it in 1960. The modern dental routine was complete. But here's the closed loop the whole story leads to. Hunter-gatherers had excellent teeth without any of this. No toothbrush, no toothpaste, no fluoride. Their diet did the work. Fibrous, unprocessed food that mechanically cleaned teeth and kept oral bacteria in balance. Then agriculture happened. Starchy carbohydrates broke down immediately into sugars in the mouth. Cavity-causing bacteria exploded. The agricultural revolution that built cities, trade networks, and industrial manufacturing also created the exact dietary conditions that made all of those things necessary. We spent 10,000 years building increasingly sophisticated solutions to a problem we created 10,000 years ago. The toothbrush in its modern form is less than 90 years old. The habit it corrects is older than civilization. Every morning, without thinking, you're solving the same problem an Egyptian or a Chinese craftsman or a Neanderthal with a sharpened twig was solving, just with a slightly nicer stick.